If you look around my office, you might realize I have kind of a love for dark, twisted cartoons. And a lot of that may be because I grew up with a lot of dark, twisted cartoons. Now, I'm not talking about the ones like Batman or ones that were meant for older kids. I'm talking about the ones that were meant for little kids, and they probably should have been made for little kids. And I loved the hell out of them. I enjoyed how much they scared me. I loved how every time you got through one, you felt a little tougher. So I'm doing a series reacting and reviewing them. We're gonna analyze how creative they are, how dark they are, and if the dark, twisted tone was warranted. So join me in taking a look at some dark tunes. Hey, welcome to the first Halloween episode of Dark Tunes, and let me ask you, have you ever thought that How the Grinch Stole Christmas was the best Grinch property? You're right, but this one's pretty dark. Halloween Is Grinch Night was released in 1977. It's technically a prequel to the holiday classic. Let's take a look. Now, of course, the logic is if the Grinch did so well with Christmas, he must do well with Halloween. I mean, he looks like a Halloween creature already. And where Chuck Jones, who obviously was a Looney Tunes animator, directed How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Friz Freleng, also a Looney Tunes director, produced this as well as another Grinch follow-up called The Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat. Which isn't as dirty as it sounds.
It was a mighty gorgeous sunset. It was truly a beautiful sight.
Where Boris Karloff, the voice of the original Grinch, had passed on by this point. This time around, he's voiced by Hans Conried, who's an on-screen actor and voice actor who you might be most familiar with playing Captain Hook from Disney's Peter Pan. And like Karloff, he's both the narrator and the Grinch in this.
All the Whos who lived here in Whoville paused and smiled as the sun sank down.
This is one of the few attempts where Dr. Seuss actually was trying to make an intentionally scary story for children. Now, it's still Dr. Seuss, it's not going to be too intense, but he did dabble a lot more with scary imagery, and you can tell he was a big fan of stories like Sleepy Hollow, because much like that story, a lot of this is building up to the terror at the end. There's really nothing that scary throughout the majority of it until you reach the last third. And what I like, again like Sleepy Hollow, there's a lot of nice, I don't even want to say fall imagery, this seems more Halloweenish. Not in decorations as much as color. These are very Halloween-oriented colors. A lot of orange, a lot of purple, a lot of black. So even though the scary stuff for kids doesn't come until the end, you still have that association with the holiday. And it's done without familiar Halloween imagery like jack-o'-lanterns or witches and so forth, which is very tricky to do, but it also gives its own identity. It really feels like it's in a different world.
I suggest we stay indoors tonight. I suggest we lock ourselves in tight.
The composer of these songs is Joe Raposo, and he was known for being a composer on Sesame Street. Now, Sesame Street is seen as the little kid stuff, but a lot of great songs have not only come from that, but some of those composers have gone on to really write some phenomenal songs. There's a movie called Raggedy Ann and Andy's Musical Adventure, which is a very trippy film, but it has something like 12 or 16 songs, and the majority of them are incredibly memorable and so well written, so don't underestimate it, and the songs here are just as great.
I wouldn't go out on a night like this for $1.50.
Whoa, big spender.
Always starts when that sour, sweet wind begins a-howlin'. Then that wind wakes up the Gree-Grumps.
This, of course, is very similar to a lot of urban legends and lore and ghost stories about how you summon a ghoul or a monster or where they come from. And sometimes you look in a mirror and say a name a couple times. Other times it's a certain time of the year. And with this case, it's when the wind changes and the wind summons these creatures to start howling from the waters because the wind is also messing with the waters. And all of that is going to add up to the threat, which of course is going to be the Grinch. So even though the story is still very original, it's still borrowing from a lot of classic storytelling elements and folklore. Now look at that, there's very little animation there, but you feel that cold. Again, I really think that's a testament to the color. I think the color really gets across the feel of that environment. Not only does it feel cold, it's a very crisp cold. You recognize it immediately.
It's a wonderful night for Grinch Night. Their troubles will now commence.
The design of the Grinch here, you'll notice, looks a little closer to how he looks in the books. In fact, when Chuck Jones worked on the Grinch, Dr. Seuss came over, looked at the sketches and said, you know, that looks more like you than my drawing, right?
Max, go bring the paraphernalia wagon.
Like a lot of great stories that want to build up the scare at the end, we know there's something about this wagon. There's something bad about it. You notice from the angles, you notice from tilted shots and the music and how long they focus on it, but you don't know what's in there yet. There's still a mystery of what this is going to be.
Euchariah said,
Grandpa Josiah?
and Grandpa Josiah said,
Yes, Euchariah?
and Euchariah said,
This is where you can tell they needed a lot of filler for this, because they clearly had this idea of building up to this third act, but you still have to fill in the rest of the 2/3. There's a lot of and blank said and so said.
Your Grinch alarm warden, Sergeant Samuel S. McPherson.
You also have kind of this weatherman for the Grinch to let you know how likely it is he's coming down. You have an inner monologue from the dog. They even have them waiting on hold on the phone.
Line's busy. Very busy.
I like this special, but it really is not among the strongest from Dr. Seuss in terms of writing.
This is Sergeant McPherson, and conditions, I'm afraid, are now worser than worsen.
And that's Henry Gibson as the guy alerting everyone of how close the Grinch is. And for those who don't know, he has done a lot of voiceover work, but a lot of comedy. And what you probably know him best from is the guy who falls in the car in Blues Brothers.
Oh my gosh, look what he's doing now. He's hunting down the Wuzzy Woozoo.
And now we're supposed to be invested in this pink thing that comes out of nowhere, and there's a chase scene involved with him, and we're supposed to be afraid for him, even though he does absolutely nothing in the special, and we're not really gonna see him again. So again, there is a ton of filler, and that is the downside to the special, but at the same time, I think they're aware this is still building up to that third act. So even though as a kid, and even as an adult, it kind of drags to wait through all this, you know that it's going to build up to the scares at the end. It could be done better, but they know the importance of having you wait.
I gotta go to the euphemism.
The euphemism?
So we see Euchariah's going to the euphemism, which we never see what that is. I mean, we know what the actual word is, but in this world we don't know what it is, which is probably intentional. And of course he comes across the Grinch.
I have a slight astigmatism, an optical condition in which parallel rays of light from an external source converge or
Filler.
diverge unequally. And will you please scare me some more, sir?
I gave you the $2 treatment. You're not worth a first-class Grinching.
How many people can turn their name into a verb?
Okay, you asked for it. Come on.
So even in a special that's mostly built up to this moment, they take their time going even slower once you're about to get to it. You have him very slowly climbing each step. You don't even know what to be afraid of yet, but just the music and the atmosphere, it all just built so nicely.
Do your worst!
And here you go, the wagon is opened up, and this is what everyone remembers, what I remember, clearly the best part of the special. Dr. Seuss was always known for drawing these very kind, friendly creatures, but he definitely had a dark side, and a lot of his artwork when he wasn't drawing for books reflected that. There was a lot of dark backgrounds, there was a lot of creepy-looking creatures, there was sometimes adult themes in them. And I feel like this is one of the few specials where he could just put all of that into one scene. He didn't need to have a story or anything like that. He could just let his imagination run wild, and man, you get some fantastic imagery out of it.
Grinch is gonna get ya! Grinch is gonna get ya!
Like Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Thurl Ravenscroft comes back to sing part of the song. He was also Tony the Tiger and the main singing voice in Haunted Mansion. You hear his voice, you instantly recognize it. So these drawings are very simple, but the way they make them look larger is the scale. They usually have a Euchariah very tiny, and you see a very flat floor, but where they position him and where they position the monsters can suddenly seem gigantic. Like, look at the design of that thing. That's not especially detailed, but when you see how small Euchariah is compared to him, it seems very, very intimidating. A lot of these very clearly have Dolly inspirations as well, with sort of the flat landscapes and the long, giant, stringy creatures or limbs. Just some wonderful examples of surrealism, and all with permission to scare the kids pretty much, because it's all been building up to this. It's basically allowed. At this point, the kid's either gonna turn it off or keep watching. And once again, simplicity, just having eyes look at you, and different kind of eyes. You don't even need to draw the rest of the nose or mouth or anything like that. Just having the eyes look at you and everything else disguised, that's intimidating enough. You're not even really following Euchariah anymore, in that you don't see how he gets from one place to another. One minute he's running away from something, the next he's in a boat being chased by another monster, and it helps feel more disjointed. I think when you feel more disjointed, you're uncomfortable and uneasy, which is, again, obviously the point of this. And it comes at you so fast. Think about how slow the first 2/3 were going. I mean, like, purposefully. I mean, it was just taking forever, and then suddenly you had this imagery that's flying at you super, super quick. But it also knows to take its time, too, to really drag out a few shots, to mix it up a bit, because if it was nothing but fast, weird shots, you'd become numb to it. So you have to change up the timing and the pacing, even if it's just for a little bit. So he tests the wind, he smells the air, he knows things are different now that started all of this, so the scares literally start deflating.
You know something, Mr. Grinch?
What?
The sour sweet wind is dying down.
So he waited him out, now he has no interest in going down to Whoville, and again, what I kind of like is you don't necessarily know what he was going to do. You just know it had something to do with that wagon that held all these terrible, scary things, but you have no idea what he had in mind, which I think is better. I think it's better leaving that a mystery. And here's a weird tidbit. So this is described as a prequel because in The Grinch Stole Christmas, he's turned good, and at the end of this, he can't be turned good. That's not the idea of the story. Yet Max still leaves the Grinch to go live with the Who's. So I always kind of wonder what happened afterwards that would have Max go back up to the Grinch. Maybe the Who's are really terrible at raising animals. Maybe the Grinch has better dog food. I'm not sure how it works.
That wind will be coming back someday. I'll be coming back.
And like a lot of classic scary stories, the threat is never fully gone. The wind will come back, he'll make his little laugh, and you have to be ready because you can't leave anything scary completely content. You still have to be on edge a little bit. Again, from a little kid standpoint, this is not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or anything. They're not really looking to psychologically scar you. So there you go, that is Halloween is Grinch Night. Again, I wouldn't technically call it one of Dr. Seuss's stronger specials, but for that Halloween feel and just to see him totally explore kind of his darker side in terms of imagery and even building up kind of a classic scary idea of this threat coming to town and trying to thwart it, I have a soft spot for it. I think there is a lot to appreciate, even though it's clearly not as good as something like Grinch Stole Christmas or The Lorax or anything like that. But I really enjoy it. I think, again, just building up to Halloween and you put this on and you see those oranges, you see those purples, you see those great shadows and those weird creatures and that great fall feeling with the cold and the Christmas of it all. I really like it. I really, really enjoy watching it. Did you grow up with this? Did you find yourself scared at all? Or were you just like, what, confused by it? Did you like it more than Grinch Stole Christmas? Because I actually was introduced to the Grinch through this. This was actually my introduction to him, and I really liked it. So when I saw Christmas, obviously I got into that one even more, but I thought this was actually a pretty cool lead-in. But I really, really enjoy this, and I'm curious if you did too. Do you not mind all the filler and the Euchariah said and all of that? Or does that get in the way, or is the creativity enough for you? Let me know, man. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Hey everyone, if there's any particular cartoon you want me to look at as being very dark or twisted, leave it in the comments below. Again, I'm not really looking for movie scenes or cartoons meant for teenagers or older. I'm talking about ones meant for little kids, but still scare the shit out of you. Whether it's an old cartoon or a new cartoon, let me know what you want me to look at.